Ma'am, are you okay? Marcus called out, slowing down just as he reached the security exit. He had only 17 minutes left to board his flight. His chest pounded, not just from the rush, but from what that flight meant. It was his only chance at a job interview in Chicago, one he had spent 3 months saving for, skipping meals, delaying rent. Everything was riding on that ticket, and yet there she was, an elderly woman, her silver gray hair falling gently over her shoulders, stood near the end of the checkpoint. She wore a soft beige sweater, slightly oversized, and leaned over 3 mismatched suitcases that seemed far too heavy for her trembling hands. She looked exhausted, barely able to lift the largest bag onto the conveyor belt. People passed her like she was invisible. A man in a business suit glanced, then looked away. A woman in uniform holding a latte shook her head slightly and walked faster. No one stopped. Marcus hesitated. His eyes flicked to the overhead screen. Final boarding call. Orion Skies Flight 416 to Chicago. He clenched his jaw. Then he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said to a nearby airport worker. "Could someone help this lady?" The worker, a woman in her 30s wearing a staff badge, rolled her eyes. "She's not my responsibility, and you don't cause trouble, okay?" Marcus stared. "She looks like she's about to fall. Then maybe she shouldn't be traveling alone," the woman muttered coldly, turning her back. Marcus ignored the sting in his chest and turned to the old woman. "Let me help you." Her eyes widened, startled. "That's very kind of you, young man." He smiled gently. "My mother always said, if you see someone struggling, you don't walk past. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or state in the comments." Marcus adjusted the strap on his backpack, lifting the largest suitcase with one hand and steadying the smaller one with the other. Evelyn struggled to keep up, her breath short, steps small and careful. "Take your time, ma'am. We've got this," Marcus said gently, though a clock was ticking in his head. They reached the conveyor belt where TSA agents were checking boarding passes. Marcus placed the suitcases down and stepped slightly to the side, letting Evelyn go first. A bored-looking TSA agent, middle-aged, bald with tired eyes, took Evelyn's boarding pass and gave it a quick glance. Next, when Marcus stepped up and handed over his ID and boarding pass, the agent paused. He squinted at the card, then at Marcus. "This your ID?" he asked, turning it over slowly, almost suspiciously. "Yes, sir. Issued 2 years ago. I haven't had a chance to renew the photo." The agent didn't respond. Instead, he waved a small scanner over the card, looked at the screen, then at Marcus again. "Why are you flying today?" Marcus hesitated. "Job interview in Chicago." The agent studied him for a few more seconds before handing it back with a sigh. "You should carry something newer, or at least dress like someone who's traveling for work." Marcus gave a tight nod, swallowing the sting in his throat. "Yes, sir." They made it through security, but just barely. Marcus grabbed the suitcases again, helping Evelyn collect her items. She moved slowly, wincing as she bent down. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked. Evelyn nodded, offering a soft smile. "I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I'm fine, thanks to you." They walked toward the corridor connecting to Terminal D. The walk would take at least 10 minutes, maybe more at Evelyn's pace. Marcus glanced at the clock. 11 minutes left until final boarding. As they crossed a hallway, Marcus noticed a row of electric carts parked to the side. An employee sat in one, scrolling on her phone. Marcus approached. "Excuse me," he said. "Would it be possible to get a ride for this lady? Her gate is pretty far." The woman looked up without expression. "Is she registered for mobility assistance?" "I don't think so, but look at her. She's barely walking." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Then she should have planned ahead. We don't just hand out rides to anyone. You want help? Call the main desk." "Please," Marcus said, voice rising slightly. "She's not asking for much. It's a long way." "I said no," the woman snapped. "And don't raise your voice. You're lucky I don't call security." A businessman passing by glanced over, eyebrows raised. Another traveler gave Marcus a sideways glance and whispered something to her partner. Marcus bit his tongue, forced a breath through his nose, and stepped back. Evelyn gently touched his arm. "It's all right," she said softly. "Let's just keep walking." They moved on. Halfway down the terminal, Evelyn paused and leaned against the wall. "I'm sorry," she said, panting lightly. "Just need a second." Marcus nodded, eyes scanning for a bench. None nearby. Another airport worker approached, a young man in his 20s with a lanyard badge. Marcus waved him down. "Excuse me, could we get a wheelchair? This lady's not feeling well." The man didn't stop walking. "That's not my department, buddy. Try baggage claim." "You work here, don't you?" "Yeah, but not for this." And just like that, he disappeared into the flow of foot traffic. Marcus stood there watching people pass without care, without pause. No one offered help. No one even seemed to notice. He looked down at Evelyn, who sat now on her suitcase, her hands folded neatly. Despite the obvious strain, her expression remained composed. "You don't have to stay, Marcus," she said quietly. "You've done more than enough already." He shook his head. "I'm not going to leave you sitting here alone like this. Even if it costs you your job interview?" He didn't answer. Instead, he offered his hand and helped her back to her feet. "I've had worse days," he said, "and I've never been the kind of person who walks away." She smiled. "That makes two of us." They continued forward, slowly, steadily, through the maze of indifferent faces and hollow announcements echoing overhead. "Sir, this is the last time I'm warning you. Step away from the service counter." The words hit Marcus like a slap. He had only walked up to the gate agent to ask for a wheelchair for the woman beside him. A woman who, by now, was visibly pale and struggling to stand straight. Evelyn held onto his arm, her fingers trembling slightly. They were less than 50 feet from her gate now, gate 47B. The digital display above showed her flight wasn't boarding yet, but Marcus knew his own had probably closed minutes ago. Still, he had to try. "I'm not causing any trouble," he said calmly. "I just asked if someone could assist this lady." The gate agent, a woman in a navy blue blazer with Orion skies embroidered on the chest, raised a single eyebrow. "And who are you to be making requests? Are you her son?" "No," Marcus replied, keeping his tone measured. "I just met her at security. She needed help." "Right," she muttered with clear skepticism. "And you just decided to follow her all the way here?" Marcus blinked. "She couldn't lift her luggage. No one else stopped. You people are always playing the hero when there's an audience," she cut in, loud enough for several people in the waiting area to glance over. Marcus froze. "Excuse me?" "I said step away from the counter," the agent repeated. "You're making others uncomfortable." Evelyn looked up, startled. "He's been helping me," she said firmly. "He didn't do anything wrong." But the agent didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, if you need special assistance, you should have informed us earlier. That's not this man's responsibility." Marcus clenched his jaw. "He's not a this man. My name is Marcus King, and I'm just trying to help." The agent sighed dramatically. "Do I need to call security?" Marcus glanced around. Passengers were watching now. A few shook their heads. One whispered to another. He stepped back slowly, lifting his hands. "Fine. We're leaving." "No, we're not," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but unwavering. "You've done nothing wrong." A young woman nearby, maybe early 30s, wearing a denim jacket, stood up. "He's helping her. You all see that, right?" The gate agent glared at her, but the woman didn't back down. "Unreal," the woman muttered under her breath. She pulled out her phone and started filming. "Say hi to the internet." The agent's smile faltered. For a moment, the balance shifted. Marcus took Evelyn's hand gently. "Come on, let's find you a seat." They moved toward a bench near the window. Evelyn sat down slowly, exhaling in relief. "You didn't have to stand up for me like that," she murmured. "Yes, I did," Marcus said simply, "because no one else would." He looked out at the tarmac. A ground crew member guided a baggage cart across the runway. The plane waiting at the gate hummed gently, oblivious to the drama just inside the terminal. For the first time that day, Marcus let himself feel the weight of what he had just lost. His flight, his shot at a new job, the future he had barely dared to believe in. And yet, when he looked at Evelyn, still calm, still composed, he didn't regret it. "I'm sorry you were treated like that," he said. Evelyn's eyes held something new, not just kindness, but recognition. "Don't be," she said softly. "The ones who should be sorry are the ones who walked by." Nakun. The woman in the denim jacket kept her phone pointed squarely at the gate agent. "You're really going to call security on someone helping an old woman?" she said loudly, her voice cutting through the terminal's white noise. Several heads turned. A father with a toddler looked up from his tablet. An older man with a book in his lap raised an eyebrow. The gate agent's expression flickered, something between irritation and unease. "There's no need to escalate this," the agent muttered, her tone suddenly more cautious. "There wouldn't be anything to escalate if you treated people with respect," the woman replied, still filming. Evelyn, seated on the bench beside Marcus, remained quiet, but her eyes were locked on the exchange. Marcus stood nearby, hands still loosely at his sides, breathing slow and deep. The adrenaline had cooled, replaced by a strange stillness. He wasn't angry, just tired. Not physically, but tired of the pattern. The pattern where being helpful somehow still got you labeled a threat. The woman lowered her phone just slightly. "You okay?" she asked Marcus. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." "You're better than good," she said. "You're decent, and that still seems to scare people." Marcus gave her a small smile. "Thanks for saying something." She shrugged. "I didn't do much. Most don't even do that." They shared a brief nod, an understanding exchange between two strangers who recognized the same exhaustion. A minute later, the gate agent disappeared into the back office, her presence replaced by a younger male agent who looked uneasy and avoided eye contact. Evelyn leaned slightly toward Marcus. "You didn't let her rattle you." He shook his head. "It's not worth it. I've been talked to like that before. If I let it get to me every time, I wouldn't get anywhere." "That's a difficult kind of strength," she said gently. Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong, or just used to it." Before Evelyn could respond, the woman in the denim jacket came over again. "They're watching now," she said, nodding toward a few passengers who were clearly filming discreetly. "You want me to post this?" Marcus glanced at Evelyn, who gave him a small nod. He turned back to the woman. "Your call, but if you do, keep the focus on the right part. This isn't about me." "What is it about then?" He paused. "How easy it is to be invisible, and how rare it is for someone to stop and see you." The woman nodded slowly, clearly absorbing his words. "All right, I'll post it with that in mind." She returned to her seat. Marcus sank back onto the bench beside Evelyn, who was sipping water from a small bottle she'd brought from her purse. "I don't know your full story," she said after a while, "but I've been watching you." He raised an eyebrow. "Watching me?" She smiled faintly. "Not in a creepy way, just observing. You're patient, respectful, thoughtful, even under pressure. I was raised that way. Then someone raised you well." Marcus looked down at his worn shoes. "My mom did her best, still does." They sat in silence for a moment as the intercom announced a delay at another gate. Evelyn adjusted her coat, and Marcus instinctively helped her straighten her sleeve. "I'm sorry you missed your flight," she said softly. He nodded. "Me too. But I'm not sorry you stayed." He looked at her. "Sometimes," she said, "you don't know the meaning of a moment until much later." Marcus wasn't sure what she meant exactly, but something in her voice made him feel like the moment wasn't over yet. "You're in good hands now," Marcus said as he helped Evelyn settle into a cushioned seat near Gate 47B. Passengers nearby were beginning to stir. The flight display above flickered to "Boarding in 30 minutes." A uniformed attendant rolled a cart of refreshments down the aisle. Evelyn would be fine. Marcus tried to convince himself of that. He double-checked her boarding pass and smiled, surprised. "First class?" Evelyn gave a small, tired grin. "A small luxury I allow myself. Occasionally." Marcus laughed under his breath. "Well, you earned it." She reached out and touched his wrist gently. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus King." She held his gaze for a moment longer than felt casual. "Thank you, Marcus King. You didn't have to do any of this." He shook his head. "Sure I did." Evelyn's eyes lingered on him, then slowly drifted back toward the terminal window. "Sometimes, the people who help the most are the ones who've been through the hardest things." Marcus didn't respond. There wasn't much else to say. With one last polite nod, he turned away and began the long walk back across the terminal. His legs felt heavier than before, Part exhaustion, part disappointment. His flight was gone. His shot was probably gone with it. He found a bench in the far corner of the baggage claim area and dropped onto it like a stone. The cold vinyl seat did nothing to ease the ache in his back. Reaching for his phone, he cursed under his breath. The battery was dead. Of course it was. No calls, no backup plans. Nothing to do but wait. His backpack became a makeshift pillow. He leaned against the wall, eyes fluttering shut. Just a few minutes to rest, he thought. Maybe everything would make more sense once he woke up. He awoke with a start. The terminal had quieted. Fewer footsteps. Softer announcements. The windows glowed with the last hints of daylight fading into night. Outside, taxis rolled past in slow procession. One black sedan glided to a smooth stop right in front of the main entrance. At first, Marcus paid it no attention. Then the rear door opened, and out stepped Evelyn. But not the Evelyn he had walked with through terminals and past stairs. Her silver hair was now immaculately styled, swept back with soft waves. The worn sweater was gone, replaced by a tailored burgundy coat. A strand of pearls shimmered faintly at her collar. She didn't look like a frail traveler anymore. She looked like someone important, someone powerful. Marcus blinked and sat up straighter. Was he dreaming? Evelyn scanned the terminal until her eyes landed on him. The moment she saw him, her face lit up. Not with surprise, but with purpose. She said a few words to the driver, then walked directly toward his bench. "I had a feeling you might still be here," she said, not even out of breath. Marcus scrambled to his feet, brushing himself off. "Miss Evelyn, I thought you were on your flight." "Change of plans." She offered a small smile, but it carried weight. Marcus looked at her again, really looked this time. "You look different." Evelyn glanced down at her coat. "Well, I suppose I do." He hesitated. "Were you testing me or something?" "No, Marcus, I was simply traveling, quietly, observing. But I had a meeting to attend before returning to Chicago." "You're going to Chicago?" She nodded. "I am, right now in fact." Marcus's brow furrowed. "I thought your flight was from here." "It was, but I never needed that one." She paused. "I have my own aircraft." Silence. Marcus stared, stunned. "Wait. What?" "I came here for business. Now that it's done, I'm heading back. I'd like you to come with me." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "Miss Evelyn, I don't understand. You helped me when no one else would. You gave up something important. I'd like to give something back." Marcus stepped back slightly, overwhelmed. "I don't have clothes for a private jet. I look like—" She laughed softly. "The plane doesn't care, and neither do I." She tilted her head. "Come with me, Marcus. Let's get you to Chicago." Here. The town car hummed softly as it glided across the private tarmac, leaving behind the noise and fluorescent lights of the main terminal. Marcus sat in the back seat, hands clasped tightly in his lap, trying to make sense of the last 10 minutes. He had not expected to be here, following a woman he had just helped into what looked like a whole different world. Evelyn sat across from him, composed, graceful, her gaze fixed outside the window. She said little during the ride, offering only a soft, "You'll see," when he asked where they were going. When the car pulled up beside a gleaming white jet with the Orion Skies logo embossed near the door, Marcus's jaw went slack. A staircase extended from the side. The lights above the aircraft's door glowed warm and gold, like the entryway to something sacred. This is yours?" he asked quietly. Evelyn nodded. "One of a few. This one's my favorite." Before Marcus could respond, a flight attendant in a Navy uniform greeted them at the bottom of the steps. "Good evening, Ms. Rhodes. Everything is prepared as requested." "Thank you, Lisa. This is Mr. Marcus King. He'll be joining us to Chicago." Lisa smiled warmly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. King. May I take your bag?" Marcus hesitated, then handed it over. Thanks." Inside, the plane looked more like a luxury suite than any aircraft he'd ever seen. Cream leather seats, real wood paneling, soft lighting that made everything feel calm. A table was already set with polished cutlery and crystal glasses. Marcus glanced at his shoes, dusty creased. He tugged his sleeves down over his wrists. You don't have to worry, Evelyn said, motioning to a seat across from her. Relax, you're a guest. He lowered himself carefully into the chair, still half expecting someone to tap his shoulder and tell him there'd been a mistake. Lisa returned. Would you care for something to drink before we take off, Mr. King? We have wine, spirits, tea, sparkling water? Just water, please, Marcus replied quickly. Still water. Evelyn chuckled. Same for me. As Lisa left, Evelyn reached into her leather satchel and pulled out a phone charger. You'll probably want this, she said. I imagine your phone died hours ago. Marcus blinked. You noticed? I notice a lot. He accepted it, plugging in immediately and watching as his screen lit up. He hesitated over the contact list. Should he call the company now? What would he even say? They may not answer this late, Evelyn said, almost reading his mind, but it wouldn't hurt to try later tonight. He nodded, then looked at her. Why are you doing this? She tilted her head. What do you mean? Flying me across the country, giving me your charger, being kind. You were kind first, she said simply, and you expected nothing in return. Lisa reappeared a moment later, placing 2 glasses of water on the table and asking if they'd like to dine shortly after takeoff. Evelyn nodded. That would be perfect. As the plane began to taxi, Marcus gripped the armrest slightly. It was smoother than any takeoff he'd experienced, so quiet, so composed. Evelyn glanced at him. First time on a private jet? He laughed nervously. First time not boarding from a crowded gate? Yeah. New experiences are good for the soul, she said. As they ascended, Lisa brought out a tray of food. Herb-roasted chicken, warm vegetables, fresh salad. Marcus stared at the plate. This looks like it belongs in a fancy restaurant. Well, Evelyn smiled. The chef used to work in one. They began to eat, the clink of silverware the only sound for a while. Marcus slowly relaxed, the weight of the day finally easing off his shoulders. So, Evelyn began gently, what's in Chicago? Marcus swallowed. Interview for a mid-level technician job at a logistics company. Good pay, benefits. It's the first shot I've had in years. You've worked as a mechanic? 8 years at a garage back home. Small town. Did everything? Brake systems, alignments, engine rebuilds? Sounds like you know machines well. I do. My dad was a mechanic. Taught me everything before he passed. I learned the rest by fixing what we couldn't afford to replace. Evelyn sipped her water. That kind of learning sticks. It's not just technical, it's personal. Marcus nodded. Yeah. Every sound tells you something. A rattle, a hum, a knock. It's like a language. She watched him a moment longer. And why leave now? He looked down. Because nothing was changing. Rent kept going up. My mom's meds got more expensive. I needed something more. Evelyn said nothing, only offered a small, approving smile. The plane flew on in silence. But Marcus had the strange sense that something important had already begun. The hum of the aircraft faded into the background as Marcus wiped the corners of his mouth with the cloth napkin provided. Dinner had been far more elegant than anything he had ever eaten in flight. No plastic trays, no soggy bread, just real food, carefully prepared. Evelyn placed her utensils down, folded her hands neatly, and looked at him. You know, Marcus, she said, you talk about engines the way most people talk about music. He chuckled, a bit sheepish. Never thought about it that way, but I guess, yeah, there's rhythm to it. More than rhythm, she replied. Precision, intuition, you can't fake that. Marcus shifted in his seat, suddenly self-conscious. I've always been better with my hands than words. Your words have been more than enough. She took a sip of coffee, then added, Have you ever thought about teaching? He raised an eyebrow. Teaching? Passing on what you know, training others? I mean, not really. Nobody in my town asked for lessons. They asked for cheap repairs. Evelyn smiled, not unkindly. That's fair, but let me paint a picture for you. She reached into a side compartment and pulled out a slim folder, placing it on the table between them. Inside, Marcus saw a map, marked with cities like Nairobi, Sao Paulo, Ho Chi Minh City. Colored lines connected hubs across continents. "What is this?" "A concept I've been developing for 3 years," Evelyn said. "A network of aviation training centers. We'd start in Kenya, then expand to Brazil, Vietnam, Indonesia." "For airline mechanics?" "Yes, but more than that. Local training programs, real infrastructure, long-term jobs. Most of these regions send aircraft overseas for maintenance. It's inefficient and expensive." Marcus nodded slowly. "So why hasn't this already happened?" Evelyn leaned back. "Because it's hard. You can build hangars, buy tools, even write training manuals. But the human part is harder." She paused. "I've interviewed dozens of candidates, engineers with the right degrees, managers with experience, but what I haven't found is someone who has both the skill to fix engines and the heart to lead." Marcus blinked. "That's, specific." She smiled. "Yes, it is." He looked back at the map. "So where are you at with it now?" "We've broken ground in Nairobi. The physical facility's almost ready. But I need a training director, someone who understands machinery instinctively, someone who can teach patiently, who can work across cultures, who treats people with respect regardless of title." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Evelyn continued, "This isn't charity. It's not a photo op. It's work, long hours, early mornings, travel, and a whole lot of responsibility." Marcus leaned back, exhaling. Are you offering me that job?" "I'm saying I'm considering it," she replied carefully. "Because I see something in you." He laughed nervously. "You met me a few hours ago. I watched you for longer than that." He looked down. "I'm just a guy from a garage. And I'm just a woman who started an airline with her sister's savings and a borrowed Cessna." She smiled again. "None of us are just anything." Marcus's throat tightened. "I don't have the credentials." "Credentials can be earned, but character?" She shook her head. "That has to be there from the start." They sat in silence for a few moments, the plane cruising calmly above the clouds. "What about my mom?" he asked suddenly. "She's older. I help her with bills, with medicine. We offer full relocation, salary 3 times what you would have made in Chicago, housing included, flights home every 3 months." He looked at her stunned. "You thought I hadn't thought it through?" Evelyn asked gently. "No, I never expected any of this." She leaned forward slightly. "You didn't expect it because the world rarely rewards people like you, quiet, decent, working class. The kind who do the right thing even when no one is watching." Marcus swallowed hard. Her words pierced through him. "What if," Evelyn said slowly, "instead of just fixing engines, you could build something that outlives you?" Marcus didn't answer, but in his chest something stirred. 18 months later, Marcus stood on the upper observation deck of the Hale Aviation Training Center, just outside Nairobi. Morning light poured in through the wide-paneled windows, casting golden lines across the polished hangar floor below. Outside, 3 mid-sized passenger jets were parked along the tarmac, flanked by scaffolding and equipment carts. Inside, 30 technicians, all local, moved with purpose. He could see them from above, checking torque on engine bolts, inspecting fuselage panels, reviewing manuals together in Swahili and English. There was confidence in their motions, pride in their posture, and all of them, every one, had been trained by Marcus King. "Impressive operation you've built," said a deep voice beside him. Marcus turned to see Daniel Kimani, Kenya's Minister of Transport, standing at his side, tailored suit immaculate, a small Kenyan flag pinned to his lapel. "Thank you, sir," Marcus replied, "but I didn't build it alone." "No," Kimani nodded, "but you set its tone, and the tone is strong." They stood in quiet appreciation for a moment longer before Kimani glanced at his watch. "I should join the others downstairs. The ceremony's about to begin." Marcus watched him walk toward the elevator, then returned his gaze to the hangar floor. It still felt surreal. Just over a year ago, he had been lying on a plastic bench in a Chicago airport, phone dead, dreams slipping away. Now, this. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the main entrance, the same kind Marcus remembered from that night. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. A moment later, Evelyn Rhodes emerged, She moved slower now with the careful deliberation of someone in her early 70s, but there was no mistaking the quiet command in her presence. Marcus made his way down the stairs to greet her. "Welcome back," he said. She looked him over. Navy blazer with the Orion Skies emblem stitched near the pocket, clipboard in hand, earpiece tucked discreetly behind one ear. "You look like someone in charge," she said, smiling. "I feel like someone still learning," Marcus replied. "Good," she nodded. "The best leaders never stop." They walked together through the training center's central corridor. On the walls were framed photos of the first graduating class, a wall-sized schematic of a Boeing engine, and a plaque that read, "Where quiet kindness becomes legacy." "Ethiopian Airlines is sending 3 more aircraft next week," Evelyn said. "Word's spreading." "We're ready for it," Marcus said confidently. They passed through the cafeteria, where some of his apprentices greeted him in Swahili and others in English. Marcus paused to shake a few hands, check on a fuel line schematic being reviewed by 2 interns, then led Evelyn into the central atrium, where rows of chairs had been set for the dedication. "You nervous?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not nervous. Just grateful." She placed a hand on his arm. "You've earned this." Before they took their seats, Evelyn pulled a small silver box from her bag and handed it to him. "What's this?" "A reminder." Inside was a miniature suitcase keychain, elegant, silver, detailed right down to tiny engraved buckles. Marcus laughed, deeply moved. "The bags I carried that day, probably the best ones I've ever lifted." "They were certainly the heaviest with meaning," Evelyn replied. As they took their place beside the podium, cameras clicked. Media crews from Kenya and beyond were capturing what many called the most promising leap in African aviation development in years. The Minister of Transport stepped up to the mic. "I invite Ms. Evelyn Rhodes and Mr. Marcus King to unveil the dedication plaque for this remarkable facility." Together, they pulled back the cloth. The plaque read, "Orion Aviation Training Center, Nairobi, where kindness creates opportunity." Marcus blinked. That wasn't the original marketing slogan. He looked at Evelyn, who whispered, "I overruled the board. They wanted something flashier." He smiled. "This feels right." The crowd erupted in applause. In that moment, Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not ego, but something quieter. A sense of having arrived not at the end of a road, but at the beginning of a legacy. And he wasn't carrying it alone. The applause still echoed in Marcus's ears as he stepped up to the podium, the bronze plaque gleaming behind him. Cameras flashed. The minister had just concluded his speech with praise for the facility, for Evelyn, and for the vision and leadership of Marcus King. Hearing his name spoken like that, on a stage with respect, still felt unreal. Marcus took a deep breath. He looked out at the crowd. Apprentices in crisp uniforms, technicians he had trained from scratch, government officials, airline executives, and in the front row, Evelyn, watching him with the same calm confidence she always carried. "I wasn't supposed to be here," Marcus began. His voice was clear, steady, but softer than the previous speakers. People leaned in. 18 months ago, I missed a flight. I was headed to a job interview I thought could change my life. Instead, I helped someone at an airport who seemed forgotten by everyone else." He paused. Some in the audience already knew the story. Most did not. That moment, missing that flight, felt like failure. But it wasn't. It was a beginning. Because sometimes helping someone isn't a detour, it's the actual path. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "I didn't have connections. I didn't have fancy degrees. But someone saw something in me because of how I acted when no one was watching." He glanced at Evelyn. She smiled faintly, eyes shining. "This center isn't about me. It's about what happens when opportunity meets preparation, and when someone believes in your ability, not just your resume." He scanned the faces before him. "Some of the people I've trained here came in without ever touching an aircraft. Today, they're maintaining international planes with precision. They're building confidence, careers, and futures." He took a breath, then added, "The world doesn't need more power. It needs more people willing to notice each other, to stop, to listen, to help." The room was still. Then came the applause, louder, fuller. the kind that fills a space not just with sound, but with meaning. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and music played in the atrium, Evelyn stepped beside Marcus near a row of photographs showing the evolution of the center. "You surprised them," she said. He laughed. "With what? No PowerPoint?" "With honesty." They stood together looking at the photo of Marcus on his first day of training in Seattle. A younger, nervous version of himself, holding a clipboard with wide eyes. "Do you remember what I told you then?" she asked. "That if I said yes, everything would change?" She nodded. "And?" "You were right." They were quiet a moment longer, watching the trainees take photos with visiting airline officials, some even asking Marcus for autographs. Then Evelyn turned to him, voice low. "It's time to talk about the next step." He raised an eyebrow. "Next step? São Paulo." Marcus blinked. "You're serious? You've proven what's possible. Brazil's next. The infrastructure's ready. They need someone to lead it. Me? I want someone who understands that training mechanics is about more than torque specs. It's about trust, patience, respect." Marcus swallowed. "I'll need time." "You've got 3 months," she said, her tone light but firm. "I'll be there with you for the launch." They turned toward the large glass windows. Beyond them, the Nairobi sun was setting behind the hangars. "You know," Evelyn added, "my board still thinks you're an unlikely pick." "I probably am," Marcus admitted. She smiled. "And yet, here we are." As she walked away to greet a delegation from Qatar Airways, Marcus stood still, letting the hum of conversation fill the space around him. He glanced again at the plaque behind the stage. Orion Aviation Training Center. Nairobi, where kindness creates opportunity. A line he hadn't written, but one that now felt like his own. He whispered to himself, "You never know who's watching or how far one kindness can travel." The restaurant had no sign outside, just a polished brass number above the door and a doorman who gave a small, respectful nod as Marcus stepped in. Inside, the lighting was low and golden, the scent of rosemary and aged wood lingering in the air. A maitre d' guided him silently through the dining room, past suited patrons murmuring over wine glasses, toward a private alcove tucked in the back. Evelyn was already seated. She wore a tailored navy suit, her silver hair twisted in an elegant knot. A slim tablet lay on the table beside her glass of water. She looked up as he approached and smiled. Not with surprise, but something more like approval. "Marcus," she said, "right on time." He tugged lightly at the sleeve of his blazer, the same one he had worn to his cousin's wedding years ago, now fitted just a bit better. "Good evening, Ms. Rhodes." She raised an eyebrow. "I think we're well past formalities." He smiled. "Then it's just Evelyn tonight." She gestured for him to sit. A server appeared wordlessly with menus, but Evelyn waved them away. "We're not here for the food." Still, the server brought a basket of fresh bread and stepped aside. "So," Evelyn began, folding her hands, "São Paulo." Marcus nodded. "I've reviewed the plans. The facility is promising, bigger than Nairobi. More political complexity," she added. "More partners to align, more eyes watching." He exhaled. "I'm ready." Evelyn tilted her head. "Are you sure?" Marcus looked her in the eye. "No, but I'm going anyway." She smiled. "That's the right answer." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The hum of conversation floated in from the main dining room, but the alcove felt like its own little world. Evelyn reached into her bag and retrieved a small box. "I brought you something," she said. Inside was a polished silver compass, old-fashioned, engraved with a single phrase, "Help without waiting to be asked." Marcus turned it over in his hands. "It's beautiful. It belonged to my father," Evelyn said softly. "He used to carry it during his years in the Merchant Marines. Gave it to me when I opened the airline." "Are you sure?" "I'm not giving it to you," she interrupted gently. "I'm entrusting it to you, until you find someone who deserves it more." He looked up, his voice rough. "How will I know?" She smiled. "You didn't know about yourself either, but you did it anyway." They finished dinner slowly, neither rushing. They spoke of new apprentices, of future expansions, of logistics and legacy. But underneath it all, there was the unspoken understanding that this might be one of the last quiet moments they would share before the work consumed them both again. As they stepped outside, the night air was cool and sharp. Evelyn's car waited at the curb. She turned to Marcus one last time. "You know what I'm proudest of?" He shook his head. "That I still have an eye for character. You've exceeded every expectation." Marcus placed a hand over the compass in his coat pocket. "I'll do my best to live up to it." "You already are." She entered the car. The driver closed the door behind her, and the vehicle pulled away into the night. Marcus remained on the sidewalk, looking up at the sky above the Chicago skyline. A year and a half ago, he had missed a flight. Now he was preparing to lead teams across continents. He thought of Evelyn's words, the plaque in Nairobi, the students who now trained others. He thought of his mother, who had just received her second surgery thanks to his new insurance. He thought of the girl in Kenya who told him she never believed someone like her could work on airplanes, until she saw him do it first. And then he thought of a silver-haired woman struggling with luggage while everyone walked by. He had stopped, and that made all the difference. Marcus King turned and walked down the street, ready to carry his mission to the next corner of the world. Because sometimes missing a flight is how you take off.